Good evening and welcome to this forum for the candidates in the November election for Mayor of St. Paul. This forum is being sponsored by the League of Women Voters of St. Paul in partnership with the St. Paul Neighborhood Network. My name is Liz Nordling and I will be the moderator tonight, and I do not live in St. Paul. As a trusted volunteer organization, the League of Women Voters does not support or oppose political parties or candidates. We sponsor forums like this to provide voters an opportunity to hear candidates' views about issues of interest in the upcoming election. The candidates participating in today's forum have all agreed to the forum rules, which were included in their invitation to participate. Each candidate will be given up to 2 minutes for an introductory statement. Candidates will then have 1 minute to answer questions and up to 30 seconds for a rebuttal. The order for speaking will begin in alphabetical order and will be rotated thereafter. Candidates' remarks are being timed to assure equality of time. This forum is being video recorded by the St. Paul Neighborhood Network for viewing by the public. Recording of this forum will stream live and appear on multiple platforms. Recording of this event, whether they be in person or of a computer screen, may not be used without the express written approval of the League. The League will only allow audio-video of this event to be broadcast in its entirety, except by the media reporting on the event. All candidates have been invited to attend. With us tonight are Melvin Carter, Mickey Frost, Dino Guerin, Bill Hosko, Dora Jones-Robinson, Paul Langenfeld, and Abu Naeem. We'll begin with opening statements, and we will start with Melvin Carter.
Good evening, and thank you for all who are participating with us. I'm St. Paul Mayor Melvin Carter. I'm excited to be here and excited to run for re-election. I'm running for re-election for 2 reasons. One, because I'm very proud of the work that we've accomplished together over the past 4 years. And 2, because it is so clear that we have more work to do. Our work is not done. We've built a big vision for the future of our city of St. Paul. We've raised the minimum wage. We've made historic investments in affordable housing. We've reimagined public safety from before George Floyd was murdered. We've started college savings accounts that start every child in our city with $50 in a college savings account. We also know that the events of the last 2 years have stressed our community and our world beyond what we could have imagined previously. I'm proud of the way our communities have come together. I'm proud of the way our public employees, our businesses, our residents have banded together to be one community. And it is so clear that we have continued work to do to continue to build a city that works for all of us. I'm excited to continue partnering with all of you as we do that work together. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now with this opening statement is Mickey Frost.
Hello, thanks for all being here. My name is Mickey Frost, and I'm a nonprofit program director. I'm a youth advocate. I'm a father. I'm a community organizer. I'm running because my daughter told me one day, she said, "Dad, whoever speaks for the kids, whoever talks about the youth." And I couldn't think of no one. So I said, you know what? I will be the voice of the youth. I will be the one that can stand up for you guys and be there, because everybody talks about how bad you guys are, but they don't talk about the fact that you guys are lacking resources. The fact that when you try to go to the gym and take your basketball down there to play a game of ball, the gyms are closed. There's nothing for you guys to do but to run the streets. I mean, we understand that these kids need to be held accountable for some of the things that they're doing and some of the actions that they're taking, but shouldn't we be held accountable for the lack of resources that we're not giving to these kids? You know, what about holding ourselves accountable and being able to stand up finally for these youth and not look to always discipline them or try to send them off, but let's first find ways that we can make sure that these kids, you know, have things to do, that they can succeed in life before we look to ways to try to harm them and lock them away. I just don't think that's fair. So I wanted to be the voice for the youth to be able to come and stand up and say, you know, I'll help when it comes to changing the narrative and giving you guys a place and a voice here in our city. And I thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dino Guerin. I'm a lifelong St. Paul resident. I've been in public safety for over 35 years. I worked for the St. Paul Fire Department for 31 years. I went through the ranks from firefighter captain to district chief. I've worked in all areas of the city and all the districts. I left the fire department. I went to work for 3M. I did corporate security. I was there for a year. I had an opportunity to go to work for the Ramsey County Sheriff's Department. I've been there 3 years now working for Sheriff Fletcher. I'm an investigative assistant, and currently I'm in charge of the COVID preparedness for Ramsey County. The reason I'm running for mayor is St. Paul simply just isn't safe anymore. And I've spent my entire life here. I raised my family here. And I don't want to leave. I want it to be safe. And I thought the person that would be in the best position to make it safe is myself, because of all the experience I have in public safety. So I decided to run. We put a campaign together that consists of family, friends, neighbors, co-workers, and volunteers. I don't run with either political party. My campaign is made up of community folks. Thank you.
Thank you. Now with his opening statement is Bill Hosko.
Good evening. Bill Hosko is my name. Today has been my 221st day of campaigning. I started February 25th, and I spent 191 days door knocking this city. And the last 30 days I've been leaving flyers at people's homes, and I'm going to continue doing so for 3 more weeks until the election. And I've been self-employed now. St. Paul is my hometown. I've been self-employed now for 30 years as an architectural illustrator. I own an art gallery and a frame shop in downtown St. Paul for 28 years. I have a small music venue down there as well. And I also maintain 2 parking ramps. I've been involved in many city issues over the years. I've served on 3 district council boards. And I'm not embarrassed to say I've run for city council in Ward 2. There's 7 wards in St. Paul, Ward 2, 5 times, and I came in second place 4 times. And it's quite interesting that people seem perpetually dissatisfied, so I'm running for mayor. While I'm out doing what I've been doing for the last 7.5 months, there's been 8 issues that people bring up repeatedly. And number 1 would be rising crime, and people are still quite concerned about the riots that we had a year ago, May. And nothing was done about it. For 2 days, riots occurred in this city, and nothing was done. Rising property tax and fees. Many people have reached their threshold, it appears. A lot of people are leaving the city, and it's very unfortunate. Also, we're not being listened to is another concern that people have. Their emails have been ignored. Their phone calls to the mayor's office have been ignored, and people are quite disappointed in that. Fireworks. People bring up fireworks. They're very disappointed that our fireworks were taken away. And while Mayor Carter may have had the right to defund them, did he have the right to turn down private contributions? I think he crossed the line with that. And then trash and fees, and the no right to share program with the trash program. When we had a referendum on that, the mayor replied with a warning that he's going to raise your taxes 17%. And that's really unfortunate that he made that statement. Thank you.
Thank you. Now with his opening statement is Paul Langenfeld.
Hello, my name is Paul Langenfeld. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for this opportunity, and thank you, Liz, for moderating. I appreciate that. I want to ask every person in the city of St. Paul one question. Are you safer now than you were 4 years ago? And if your answer is no, we need a change of leadership now, because 4 more years down the road, there may be nothing left to lead. There's 2 kinds of experience in this world. There's good experience and there's bad experience. There's right experience and there's wrong experience. Wrong experience brings failure. Good experience brings success. Now, 4 years ago, St. Paul voters thought that they were choosing good experience. Turns out they were wrong. And now the entire city is having a very, very bad experience, and people are dying. That can't happen. I'm running for mayor because I have 3 priorities. First is safety. Safety, the reduction of crime, safety for residents and businesses. Second is I'm going to support local small businesses so they can flourish. Third, I'm going to renew our aging infrastructure. I've got a 30-year plan. All of that is going to make our city safer and make our city flourish, and that's what I'm going to bring as the next St. Paul mayor.
Thank you. Next with his opening statement is Abu Naeem.
Hi, St. Paul. My name is Abu Naeem. I'm a first-generation American. I was born in Dhaka, Bangladesh. I'm raised in New York City, and I have a Master's of Science in Agricultural Resource Economics in UC Berkeley. I'm the former education data analyst for South Washington County Schools. I'm a self-learned programmer and founder of the St. Paul Open Data Initiative, and I'm also a cleanup organizer in the Midway and Frogtown communities, and these are my frog eyes. And I just want to address the amphibian in the room. So I wear my frog hat while I'm door knocking to show Frogtown pride and also share joy with others. So I have a lot of fun stories where there's kids that are leaping to action when they see me. So putting my hat aside, my campaign is about giving voice to the disenfranchised and empowering citizens. Did you know that 2 out of 3 registered voters did not vote in the last mayoral election? And when reaching out to disenfranchised citizens, I've learned that their concerns are public safety and they feel disillusioned by the political process. For public safety, I would like to do a yes and approach. How can we support policing alternatives and fund the police department? And also, I go in a place of compassion. I believe that all citizens, including officers, deserve dignity and mutual respect. For citizen empowerment, I want to implement a participatory budget. So we pay taxes. We can allocate a portion of our taxes to public programs, and these programs can be designed by citizens and by nonprofits. So now citizens are investing in their community, and there's accountability and transparency. Thank you.
Thank you. Now with her opening statement is Dora Jones Robinson.
Good evening, everybody. It's an honor to even sit in this room amongst the people that are here. First, I want to say that I am a lifelong, I moved here from St. Louis at the age of 3. I am a actual Rondo resident that was uprooted during the 94 freeway. We were actually one of the families that had to move out of that off of Rondo and McCubbin when they came through. I graduated on an A honor roll from Central High School. I went on to a business college where I received a certificate in legal secretary and business procedures. I worked for the state of Minnesota for 15 years. I then went on to work for the state of Arizona for 4 years and the city of Phoenix up under their mayor in the economic development department for 4 years. Then I moved back to St. Paul and opened up a nonprofit organization titled Mentoring Young Adults, and I worked that for 16 years. So it's hard to listen to someone say that there hasn't been a voice for young people in the city of St. Paul. It absolutely has. For over 16 years, we've worked diligently hard with young people around gun violence, housing, education, helping them get to college, and then not only helping them get to college, but helping them through college. A lot of times we'll say, okay, we got them in college, but they don't realize it's tough getting through college. Some of them drop out. So we've been diligently working very hard with young people, getting them through college, helping them do all those things. I've also worked on various boards, African American Leadership for 10 years, Council on Black Male Success for 6, Martin Luther King Statewide Celebration for 8, Family Housing Prevention Assistance Program for 2, Brotherhood Inc. for 2, St. Paul Promise Neighborhood for 3 years, and Rondo Inc. I was the entertainment chair for 2 years. So that's giving you a background on who I am and what I've done. The reason why I'm running for St. Paul mayor is because we drastically need some a change in our city of St. Paul.
Thank you. We'll go to the first question, and it goes to Dora Jones Robinson first. What are the most pressing public safety issues in St. Paul, and how would you address them?
One of the most pressing things that we all can agree on right now is public safety. Gun violence that's ramping up in our city. We need to definitely address that with a sense of urgency. I don't believe that finances should come before lives. We have to take this gun violence and the crime in our city very seriously. I've lost family members to gun violence. One of the things that I'm going to create is a gun violence initiative which will help bring those guns in 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. They should be able to go to any police department and turn in that gun. Once they turn in that gun, they will have a contract with the city of St. Paul that they will not pick up a gun, they will not be engaged in criminal conduct, or they will be, the contract will be revoked, the money we gave them will come back, and they will also do some kind of serious time. We've got to hold these people accountable. We can no longer sit idly by and tap them on the hand and say,
Thank you. The question now goes to Dean O'Garen.
What was the question?
What are the most pressing public safety issues in St. Paul, and how would you address them?
Well, it's the escalating of crime and how it would address threefold. I mean, one, the police chief identified back in 2019 that we need more boots on the street. We need more police officers. So first thing we would do, we would have to get them back up to their full complement. They're at about 550 right now. In 2018, they're at 650. So we need to hire about an additional 100 police officers. By the time they get trained and hit the street, there'll be 40 more officers that have retired. So right now, we need to start 2 recruit academies. We also need to go out to other departments that already have trained police officers and offer incentives to get them over to St. Paul, because we need them on the street now. We really can't wait 6 months or a year. The other thing that I would implement is we have to get back to helping the youth, like Mickey said, but we need to start enforcing the curfew. So I would propose and I would implement that we'd enforce the curfew. These young kids are on the street at 2, 3 in the morning. Only 2 things are going to happen. Either one, they're going to be a victim of crime, or 2, they're going to commit a crime. We need to find out why they're on the street.
Thank you. The question now goes to Melvin Carter.
Thank you. Our public safety concerns are too serious to be driven by anecdotes or simple answers. Our approach has been to engage St. Paul residents over the past 4 years, and over 2,000 St. Paul residents have been involved in building this, what we call our Community First public safety framework, that includes optimal response, that includes investments in police capacity. We've raised our police department's operating budget by $10 million a year over the past 4 years, and the proposal that I have in front of the City Council includes another $4 million. We are also recognizing that many times when people call 911, it's not because there's some violent crime happening, but because there's someone in crisis, and we're sending social workers to help respond to those, to help free up our officers. And then it also involves proactive investments, both in our young people and in our places, so that we can be addressing the causes, the root causes of violent crime before it occurs. This is the comprehensive, coordinated, and data-driven approach to public safety that we have to take, so that we're not stuck with oversimplified answers like asking people to voluntarily turn in their guns, or thinking that a youth curfew will solve our violent crime challenges.
Thank you. The question now goes to Abu Naeem.
For obviously public safety is our biggest concern. I would say I have 2 approaches. One is part of the idea of policing alternatives, and is how do we execute it in a proper way? So part of Mayor Carter's Public Safety Commission, it provides, I agree with his notion that we need alternatives to police for certain low priority calls, but doesn't really provide an execution plan. So one of my proposals is that for citizens, they have 2 options. They can call 311, a non-emergency number, to get a non-police officer to assistance, or they can call 911, and the operator can ask, the operator can ask a citizen if they want to have an officer there or not. The key thing is that the citizen determines what's the danger of the situation, who's appropriate staff to send. In addition, I want to implement a policy where for patrol officers, they get 30% paid time to engage with citizens. This means officers are on the beat and also doing community engagement. To give you a little perspective, I grew up in New York City and experienced post 9/11 and experienced discrimination.
The question now goes to Mickey Frost.
Public safety, of course. I mean, is it a secret? We need more police officers out here in these communities. Yes, we do. Not only do we need more police officers, we need to be able to fund these boots on the ground organizations that can prevent. You know, why look for the alter end of something happening when we can look at preventing it from even happening? Why not take and say, if we're going to work with more police officers, we get mental health experts and we start to listen instead of just thinking that we know all the answers, because together we can put together enough information so that we can fuel whatever's needed so that our streets can be safe. We need to invest more in the individuals that probably have less than perfect records, because they understand the streets, they understand these communities. Why keep making these people feel as if they're not wanted when they are of value to these communities? So let's start working even with those people, and let the ones that have records and stuff, let them be a part of this change also.
Thank you. The question now goes to Bill Hoskell.
During my talks with people these last 7.5 months, the common refrain with most people is that the public does believe the continual placating of misconduct and low-level crime is the driving force behind rising crime in this city. I do agree with that, and I do intend on reversing that trend if I'm elected. Our situation, with all due respect, I believe will continue to worsen under Mayor Carter. He has been an elected official for, I think it's about 9.5 years, going on 10 years now, and the problem is only worsening. Further, most people believe there's been a collapse by elected officials and prosecutors and judges to fulfill their responsibilities and to enforce laws. They are picking and choosing which laws to enforce. An authoritarian dictatorship society has this. I will reverse this trend. And then mass transit is another thing I hope to talk about yet tonight. Major problems with mass transit. Thank you.
Thank you. The question now goes to Paul Langenfeld.
I asked earlier, do you feel safer now than you did 4 years ago? Now ask yourself the question, what's changed over the last 4 years? Are there more guns on the street? Yes, I think so. Are more young people having access to guns? Yes, that has to change. I'm going to institute a hang up your guns program. People have to have incentive to turn in their guns. How about $1,000? $50 won't do it, $100 won't do it. Turn in your gun, you're going to get $1,000. That's an incentive. I also want to be very clear about this. The guns don't pull their own trigger. People are pulling these triggers, and there is a bloodlust for violence and to shoot the guns. That has to change. One person can't change it, but it's a team approach. So I'm going to bring about a team that involves professional church ministers, the rabbis, the imams, those who will speak to people about the core values to give up violence and instead embrace
Thank you.
peace.
Does anyone have any additional comments? Yes. We'll start with Dora.
First, I'd like to say, our current mayor said that he's been working on a framework. Well, you've been working on that now, Melvin Carter, for 2 years. You've been talking about this public policy, public safety framework for over 2 years. And then when we had a press conference, you said you had a 20-year plan around gun violence. That is absolutely unacceptable. Our lives are out here on the line. And you should be more apt to be talking about what I can do right now as opposed to later on. We're dying on the streets today, not 20 years from now.
Question goes to Bill Hoskell.
I'm sorry, that was a direct response to me. That was a direct criticism of me. Do I get to respond to that?
Okay.
Thank you. The reason you can't cite an exact time or date that I said that is because it just didn't happen. We've been working on this much longer than 2 years, actually, probably 5 years, because we started working on our public safety framework during the campaign when I first ran for office. That's the point. We can never stop working on and innovating around public safety. We can never stop continuing to build and refine and rebuild our public safety framework. We can't expect people who might otherwise participate in violent crime to voluntarily hang up their gun and think that that's going to be our approach to keeping our neighborhoods safer. It hasn't worked in other communities. There's no reason it would. That's why we need evidence-based, data-driven approaches to public safety, and that's what we're bringing.
Thank you. Hoskell?
Yeah, regarding the subject of guns, Mayor Carter, when you ran for mayor the first time, I understand your home was robbed and that you had 3 firearms within your home that were taken, and you had 4 children in the house at the time, perhaps?
Did you say that to express your condolences that I was the victim of a crime?
I'm about to ask you a question.
Okay, I thought you were going to express your condolences that my family was the victim of a crime, but that's not it?
Mr. Carter, it's Mr. Hoskow's time.
Thank you.
Okay. Did you have three unsecured guns in your home with 4 children in that home?
No. Is the microphone on? No, and that wasn't any part of any public record or any police report. No, absolutely not. Of
You
course
had no
not.
firearms in your home?
Okay, let's move on. Dean O'Guerin?
Well, I just wanted to say, you know, when people are a victim of crime, they have a right to talk to an officer. And right now, about 40% of the reports are done online. So you don't get an opportunity to interact with a police officer to find out, hey, you know, they're targeting Mitsubishi Outlanders, so don't park it outside, put it in the garage, because they'll take your Cadillac converter. We're missing that connection. Most of the police reports being done online is a disservice to the citizen. We want to talk to the police officer when we're a victim of crime to find out what we can do to prevent it. And currently, I'm sorry, thank you.
Yes, Abu?
So Mayor Carter, is it part of your plan to have 1 million overtime paid for downtown officers for the downtown area? Is that part of your plan? Is that your funding in the police department?
I'll let you respond.
I'm sorry, is this a venue for us to provide direct questioning of each other? I do have questions, if that's the case. We have authorized $1 million of police overtime in the West 7th area, which was the area which, of course, we saw a horrific incident of crime in our city just this past weekend. I think what that demonstrates is while we are investing in police, while we currently have one of the largest police academies on record in our city's history in the academy right now, while we've increased our annual budget in policing by $10 million a year over the past 4 years, and while we have a proposal in front of the city council for an additional $3 million right now, exactly what we've been saying for the last 4 years is true, and that's that keeping our city safe is going to require much more than just police officers. We have to build the supports around our officers because our officers always tell us that they run from call to call to call, and they tell us they're not social workers. That's why we're building those systems around them.
Thank you. Anyone else with a comment? Then we're going to move on to the next. No, you've already had your time. We're going to move on to the next question, and it goes to Paul Langenfeld first. A large part of gun violence seems to happen late at night, after midnight, and associate it with bars. Should the city be thinking about an earlier bar closing time?
It's a complicated question, and the answer is complicated as well. First of all, some of this violence happens by people that are too young to be going into bars. So the young people, there is a curfew in the city of St. Paul for young people. It needs to be enforced. It needs to be enforced. And when it comes to the bars and people who are being responsible, how about metal detectors at the entrances? When what happened there at the truck park bar, people brought guns inside the bar. And if you look at that whole crowd, how many other people have guns? So security needs to be heightened. That's what's going to keep our city safe, and that's what I'm going to do as the next St. Paul mayor.
Thank you. The question now goes to Bill Hoskow.
Well, closing bars earlier is, I don't know, that's really an option. I mean, there's dozens and dozens of bars and restaurants that are open late. Metal detectors, I don't know if that's feasible. I mean, it's, where does it end? People do have a right to carry, some people. The truck bar, what I was noticing weeks up to the shooting is people were congregating outside that facility and drinking. They were even blocking the sidewalk, and that was a violation of city law, and nothing was done during that time. So I am on record closing bars earlier. No, thank you. And metal detectors are not feasible. It's very, very difficult. I mean, most of us in this room wouldn't get through a metal detector going into a bar right at this moment. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Question goes to Mickey Frost.
I say no. Our city is a great city, and we have to not lose track of that. Because some things have been happening over the last couple of years, we cannot lose the fact that we are a very vibrant and a great city with a great community of people. closing bars down. Why? Why should people not be able to go out and enjoy themselves because of a few people that are out here creating this mischief and doing the things they're doing? But how about we prevent those kids and start giving them jobs, start taking away the fact that just because a person has made a mistake once in their life or twice in their life that they can no longer be any use to society. That's where these kids are feeling like they have no other alternative but to go grab a gun and go and do some of the things that they're doing. But if we start investing in these kids, investing in the fact that, you know, hey, you made a mistake, okay, we understand that, let's try to figure out ways to get you better and get you back into society where you can be a productive citizen and soon be a future leader. Let's start taking these kids more earlier in age and putting them in leadership positions so that, you know, they'll understand how valuable their lives are.
Thank you. Question goes to Melvin Carter.
Thank you. I agree with Mr. Frost on this. We need new ways to invest in our young people. We have to be creative and aggressive in finding new ways every day to invest in our young people. That's why we eliminated late fines in our library, so every one of our young people can afford to use the public library. That's why we've tripled free funding and free programming in our recreation centers. That's exactly why we have doubled youth jobs funding, and that's why we launched our college savings accounts initiative to start every child born in our city with $50 on the pathway to college from birth. That's the work that we're doing. That's a core part of the work that we intend to continue doing in a second term.
Thank you. Question goes to Dino Guerin.
Well, I wouldn't make the bar owners a victim. They didn't do anything wrong, so I wouldn't even consider closing the bars early. Bar owners have had it tough enough with the COVID and the social unrest. We should be supporting them. We really should be looking at the people that are committing the crimes, and if a lot of the crimes are late at night, then we might want to consider putting more police officers on late at night. Just like a grocery store, they have more cashiers when they're busy, and if we're more busy at night, the St. Paul Fire Department does it all the time, we put more people on at peak hours. So the police department's going to do the same thing, and I would refuse to make someone that owns a restaurant that serves liquor a victim because someone came into their establishment and caused problems that's against the law. So I'd enforce the law and put more resources on the street at night.
Thank you. Question goes to Dora Jones Robinson.
First of all, I don't believe that we should be closing bars early because that actually hurts the business owner. We need to be trying to help the business owners thrive, not just survive. One of the things that we have to do, I don't care how many jobs we give these kids, how many housings we put them in, if we don't begin to change the mindset of these young people and change what they look like, what that looks like, how they think, how they react to community, how they love their community, giving them jobs and putting them in housing is just not enough. It's not going to work. We got to change the mindset. Our young people are out here conducting and doing crimes, selling drugs and doing that. They've been doing that a while. It's hard to get that out of their mind. That's going to take some time to change the mindset. That's what we have to do, is begin changing the mindset. And if you vote for Dora Jones Robinson on November 2nd, I got ways that we're going to be able to do that and get that done. We have got to begin to work individually with these young people, talking to them and holding them absolutely 100% accountable for the things that they're doing in our city. We no longer can accept just giving them a job. That's not enough.
Thank you. Question goes to Abu Naeem.
I'm totally against closing bars early. I think it's an opportunity definitely for businesses to, we gotta make sure they're able to make money and that sort of thing. But I will say this, that I did grow up in Frogtown. I did live in Frogtown, and I live near Johnny Baby's, and that is a bar that has closed a few years ago. And one of the reasons that there was a lot of violence in that area, and the bar, based on the violence, they reduced their hours time to reciprocate that. So I think we should actually look at where the violence is occurring. If it is occurring in a specific area, then maybe reducing the bar hour time might be appropriate for that venue. But that decision needs to be on the decision on the venue and not from the city.
Thank you. We're going to move on to the next question, and it goes to Abu Naeem first. It's on rent control. Do you support or oppose ballot question number 1? Or should St. Paul have rent control? And if so, how should that policy work?
So I oppose the current measure that's on the ballot. One of the core reasons is that it is one of the strictest rent control measure in the country. In particular, that it doesn't provide any exemption for new rental properties, for new development. And so I would support a rent control measure if it allowed exemption for new development. In particular, that new developers, when they get a loan, they need to get a loan from finance from the banks. And banks, when you do a 30-year loan, you want to reduce the amount of risk. And if there is a cap in the rent control, when there's a market recession, developers cannot adjust the rents to adjust for that. And that can really stop a project from happening on the spot. And another concern is that 3% enough? Because it can put a lot of administrative costs to be able to support this type of measure. So yeah, so I do support it, but we should evaluate what is the right number.
Thank you. The question goes to Dora Jones Robinson.
To be very honest with you, I believe the ordinance is unclear. It is very shiesty. It's not being very clear to the residents of St. Paul what this is going to look like. This is how they end up passing these ordinances, because they'll throw them on a ballot, and the ballot should have the attachment of what that means under the question that you're answering. So I think it needs to be revised from where I've looked at. That ordinance is absolutely unclear, and people that don't have that knowledge about what's going on with rent control could actually hit a yes when they really mean a no, because it's very kind of it's not clear. So I'm not gonna say anything more about that other than it needs to be revised. It is a very unclear ordinance, and people are getting tricked in that question. So I'm not gonna. I really think that we should have a cap on some landlords, but what's good for Frogtown or the East Side is not gonna be good for Highland Park. These are two different communities, and we can't lump everybody in the same bowl.
Thank you. Question now goes to Bill Hoskell.
Good reply, Dora. It's, I've talked to a lot of people, and I've been out door knocking here for months. I'm going to remain neutral as far as having a position on this, because I don't, sometimes when there's a referendum, particularly when you're mayor, and like with the trash referendum 2 years ago, when the mayor basically stuck his nose in there, with all due respect, and threatened people with a 17% property tax increase if you dared vote in favor, against his program. But I wanted to see, and I am seeing it, a robust information between both sides given to the residents, and I'm seeing it in the mailboxes, I'm seeing it on their doors, and that's a very positive thing. But I do have concern about long-term, if this passes, it will push out a lot of the small rental property owners out of the city, and the big boys and big girls from outside of the city, from outside of the state, will end up acquiring these properties over the long term. I'm very concerned about that.
Thank you. The question now goes to Paul Langenfeld.
I am a big believer in free market pricing. The market will determine what the price of rent should be. The government doesn't need to interfere and put some kind of a mandate on that. Oftentimes, when the government gets involved, you get more of what you don't want and less of what you do want. Keep the government out of it. The government isn't in the business of controlling the rising cost of rent. Can't even control the rising crime. So get the government out, let the free market establish it, and then we're going to find that balance. So, and then for those individuals that need assistance, work with them directly, the financially vulnerable, get the nonprofit charities involved, help people that need help. But don't make some kind of a mandate that's going to be oppressive and controlling. Keep the government out of it. Thank you.
Thank you. The question goes to Melvin Carter.
Can I just use 3 extra seconds for rebuttal?
Thank you. I've been writing, I have almost 2 decades of public policy decision-making experience, and one of the things that every policy that I've ever written has in common is that the first draft needed revisions. And I think that's one of the limitations of policy making through referendum, is that we sort of lock in a first draft. This proposal in front of us is absolutely a start, and there are some very clear challenges with regard to the equity of our housing market that must be addressed with urgency. We must address those things. I am going to be voting yes on the rent stabilization proposal, not because it's perfect, but because it's a start, and our housing and our equity goals simply cannot wait another day. They're just too urgent. I do believe that there are concerns with regard to its impact on potential new housing starts in a time where our population is growing so fast because our city is that vibrant place that Mr. Frost was talking about, that people want to live in and they recognize the high quality of life that we have here. It's a must for us to be able to build the new housing that we need to accommodate our rapidly growing population. And I think it's necessary for all of us, whether this proposal passes or fails at the ballot, it's going to be necessary for all of us to look at this as a start, not the finish of a conversation, and all come together in a conversation to say, how do we want this policy in the long term for our city in a way that builds us towards our goals that we have?
Thank you. The question goes to Dean O'Gearan.
Well, I looked at other cities that have rent control, and it's failed. The landlords simply convert their rental units to condominiums and sell them for owner-occupied, so you lose all your rental. The other thing is, I don't think it's government's role to decide how much a landlord should charge for rent. I don't know his expenses. I don't know what his overhead is. I don't know what his interest is. He does, or she does. So I don't think government should be involved. And the other thing is, where would you draw the line? You know, I've been told that the biggest markup on food is pizzas. It costs $3 to make a pizza, they sell them for 20. I mean, would people advocate that we have control over how much you can charge for a pizza? Government shouldn't be involved in that. Let the private sector do what they do best.
Thank you. Question goes to Mickey Frost.
I think that we should explore those options a little longer and not make that decision right now, personally. Because if we're going to talk about stabilizing the rent and having control on it, there is, I believe Doris said that there is property owners that, you know, that's the means of them making their money is by being homeowners and you know, renting their houses out. I just don't think that, you know, there's enough research that has been done yet on either side to figure out the exact way that we should go about doing, you know, controlling the rent. I think if we're going to talk about raising the rent, we need to first talk about job creations and being able to put better jobs in these communities and let the community, the people that live in those communities and around those homes, be able to be the first to get those jobs so that if rent does end up being raised, they can afford where they live.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next question, and it's on infrastructure. Oh, yes.
Can I have a follow-up on this last
Yes.
topic? Thank you.
I would like to as well.
Okay.
We lost 5 individuals in St. Paul last winter just because they didn't have a warm place to sleep. When the pandemic hit, we saw a 10-fold increase in members of our community who were sheltering outdoors in tents. We went from 29 to over 380, just like that. Our school teachers tell us we have children in our public schools who move schools 5 and 6 times in a school year because that's how housing insecure their families are. And we know that black and brown families face rent increases significantly higher than their white neighbors. These are challenges we have to address, and just to say that we have to think longer, we're not sure, we're neutral in this time of crisis for our families is just not good enough.
Thank you. Dora?
One of the things that I would like to make sure that we get done on November 2nd, voting for Dora Jones Robinson, is that we have to start beginning to mentor these families to be homeowners. That is what is going to help us in our community. When we're not homeowners, we don't have no investment in the community. And if you're a homeowner, you take care of your building, your home, you take care of the block, you take care of your community much better because you have an investment there. I think that's the way we need to go. We have to go that route. I understand that people do need to rent, but putting a cap on some of that is good, but we need to mentor people into being homeowners. That's the problem with our African-American people of color. We aren't homeowners.
Thank you. Yes, Paul Langenfeld.
So I agree with Liz. Education doesn't stop when you're out of school. Education is a lifelong thing. I want adults to get an education. And as mayor, I'm going to use all of our community resource centers, all of our rec centers, all of our libraries, and hold education classes. So adults can learn how to do their budget, how to save money, how to do this, how to do that, and then become homeowners themselves, how to move up the ladder so that they improve their life.
I have been told that we will not have rebuttals unless you have been mentioned by name in an answer. So we are going to move on to the next question, and it will go first to Mickey Frost. This is on infrastructure. If elected, how would you balance the need for infrastructure maintenance with other city needs, especially considering we are still dealing with the effects of COVID-19?
But the first thing that we need to do is be able to listen to each other, sit down with those experts, sit down with those city leaders, and figure out the best inclusive plan that will make sure that, first of all, our budget is significant when it comes to fixing our streets, when it comes to maintaining the buildings and the structures, and also our roads. But that's going to be hard to do if we are continue to have the crime that the way we're having these crimes. So in order for us to fix those things, and we're going to first have to understand that public safety is going to be something that we're going to have to tackle first. Once we do tackle that, then working to fix our roads and working to fix the infrastructures and the things that are needed, those are not priorities here in these communities right now. That we need to first learn how to prioritize the things that are needed in our communities first.
Thank you. Question goes to Dean O'Garen.
Yeah, the current system that we have works pretty well. The capital improvement budget, the CIB budget works well. It starts in the community with the community councils. We get input from them. It gets ranked up the ladder all the way up to the mayor's office and then to the council. The only thing that I would add is I would probably put more of a public safety component into the capital improvement budget. So at the very end, anything that's more of a public health or a public safety issue would go to the top. So I would invite the fire department leaders, the police leaders, the leaders in public works to have input when we make the final decision, because if something is a public safety risk, then it's going to have to be taken care of first.
Thank you. Question goes to Paul Langenfeld.
I said in my opening statement that I had 3 priorities. The third was renewing our aging infrastructure. And I got to tell you, there is money available on the federal level because of the landscape of our nation. There's a lot of money available. So we want to repair our aging bridges, fix our streets, get our storm sewers up to date. And that is not just a short-term fix. That is a 30-year plan. So we are good and we are going to be set. So my priorities, I am going to fill the potholes and I am going to plow the snow within 24 hours. If I have to drive the truck myself, we're going to take care of the basic needs of the city, and we're going to make things happen, and this is going to be a better city because of it when you vote for Paul Langenfeld as mayor on November 2.
Thank you. The question goes to Abu Naeem.
All right, so our infrastructure has been underfunded for many years, and this is kind of like a math problem, if you want to say this. So, like, I think the best way to address. So, I do want to prioritize of repairing our infrastructure, and the best way to do this is to use the American Rescue Plan. So, this is 155. Currently, we have $155 million that are available that can be used for one-time investments. So, according to the City Council, they also want to use the American Rescue Plan for infrastructure as well. So I agree with the City Council, and I think we should advocate to use the American Rescue Plan dollars for that infrastructure building. And right now, Mayor Carter's plan to use the American Rescue Plan does not really put that money into infrastructure building.
Thank you. Question goes to Dora Jones Robinson.
First, I want to say that when we're talking about infrastructure, we've got to spend it. We've got to quit spending so much money. And one of the things that I'm going to do as the mayor of St. Paul is I'm going to reduce the staff that is currently in the mayor's office. I mean, that is a very heavy staff. It's the heaviest staff in the history of St. Paul. A lot of our funds are going to places that we can find other places that it needs to go. And as far as the potholes is concerned, the reason why they keep filling them is because they're not using the right product. And then also, I'm a little upset that the fact that the TIF, tax increment finance, that we've allowed the Alliance Field to be in our city tax-free. And also, there's a couple other big conglomerates that are tax-free. That's a lot of money that we're losing in our city of St. Paul. Should not be tax-free. And then on top of it, we're hiring all these different people with $180,000 wages. That is absolutely unacceptable and ridiculous. We've got to start being more careful with the money because we're in a different place than we was 2 years ago or a year ago. And we've got to be more careful with our finances.
Thank you. Question goes to Melvin Carter.
Ms. Jones may be running against Mayor Coleman because that's who signed off on some of those decisions. She may be running against Randy Kelly because our mayor's office staff has the same number of general fund of general fund staff as has been in the mayor's office for years. And I also have to acknowledge that when I take exception to the characterization of renters as not being invested in our community. There are many people in our community who rent. A majority of our city rents, and there are many renters in our community who are very invested in our community. I'm sorry, I was responding to much of the criticism that happened there. The one thing that's missing from this big conversation about the city's infrastructure budget is numbers. I haven't heard any numbers in this conversation, with the exception of an incorrect assessment of how much dollars we have from American Rescue Plan dollars. Here's numbers. We've doubled. We came in with streets that we have a 40-year replacement, that we have a 40-year life cycle of, that have been on a more than 200-year replacement cycle. Here's numbers. In the last 4 years, we've doubled funding to repave our city streets. We've established our first ever dedicated funding for bike lanes. We've doubled our sidewalk maintenance budget. We've won $52 million in state bonding to rebuild the 3rd Street and Kellogg Bridge. And good news for Mr. Guerin is we have built a public safety component of our capital improvement bonding. And good news for Mr. Naeem is we are addressing using American Rescue Plan dollars to address infrastructure through our works package. Those people who we put to work through our American Rescue Plan dollars will have to do something. Rebuilding our aging infrastructure is one of those things.
Thank you. Question goes to Bill Hosko.
In our first 90 days, if I'm elected, the people of this city and I are going to have a conversation as to what is working and what is not working and how we're going to fix what is not working in this city. Dora brought up a point of cost savings or expenditures coming out of City Hall currently, and Mayor Carter's staff has been the subject of many people's comments over the last 7.5 months when I've been at their doorstep. And one of the questions I'd like to ask him right now, and there's a follow-up question, is at most, how many staff people have you employed while mayor? And then a second thing I'd like to bring up currently is the riots of May 28th and 29th of 2020. George Floyd died on Monday. There was 2 nights of riots in Minneapolis. Why was there no curfew in place in St. Paul on May 28th and 29th? Why did it wait until Saturday? The riots were Thursday and Friday. And look at the economic harm it has caused this city because there was no curfew in place. Millions of dollars have been lost since in sales tax revenue.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Do you want to respond?
Sure, I'll respond in the form of a question. Mr. Guerin, how many general fund funded employees do we have in the mayor's office right now? I'm sorry, I'm asking Mr. Hosko. Mr. Hosko?
Okay.
Could be. Mr. Hosko?
Yeah.
You're criticizing the number of general fund funded mayor's office employees there are. How many are there?
Okay. How many are there? I asked you.
You don't know?
No.
So that's the point.
No,
You're making a critique of something that you don't know.
I didn't critique. I asked a question.
That's inaccurate. And the truth is, our number of general fund funded employees is actually the same as Mayor Coleman's and the same as Mayor Kelly's before us.
Okay.
We are very effective at leveraging outside resources and grants and things like that to expand our workforce. And so we've been able to go outside of taxpayer dollars to expand our workforce through things like a $2.5 million grant that we got from the Bloomberg Foundation to support our climate work. That's a plus. That's an additive thing for our city.
Thank you.
And so use real numbers and real data, please.
Thank you. First, I'm going, Ms. Robinson, please. First, Mr. Guerin, you were mentioned by name. Do you wish to make any comments?
No, I think it was a mistake, so yeah, no, we're fine.
Okay, Mr. Naeem, you were mentioned by name. Do you wish to make any comments?
No.
Okay. Then I think we've covered that one. We're going to move on to the next question, and it will go first to Bill Hosko. Some residents and businesses are hoping for a revitalization of the Midway, specifically areas damaged during social unrest. How can the city support these areas?
Again, I want to be on record is how much of this would have been averted. Mr. Floyd died on Monday. The protests in Minneapolis were quickly overshadowed by riots on Tuesday and Wednesday. The riots in St. Paul started on Thursday. They continued into Friday. There was no curfew put in place until Saturday. The National Guard didn't show up until Sunday. How much of this wouldn't have happened if that basic thing had occurred? And I asked Mayor Carter previously, can you explain why you wait until Saturday and not Thursday to initiate a curfew in this city?
Mr. Carter, I'll give you 30 seconds.
There's a significant amount of criticism of our St. Paul Police Department at this table, and that's frustrating and challenging. In actuality, we have to work closely with our police chief, with our state partners, with other partners as well. We had one day of very heavy rioting in our city, and our police officers and our firefighters did a heroic job of standing up for our city in that moment, where we had people from outside of our community who came to our community from near and far to try to wreak havoc and to try to create destruction in our community. We worked with our police officers, we worked with our fire department, we worked with partner agencies, and we worked with a significant number of community-based partners to help address those things and to be able to bring St. Paul back into a state of stability and move forward.
Thank you. And now the question goes to you, Mr. Carter, about residents and businesses hoping for a revitalization of the Midway area. How can the city support these areas?
Well, I'm one of those. I'm from this area. I'm born and raised in this area, and this is a community that is absolutely mine. It was heartbreaking to see that night of destruction in our community, and heartwarming to see the next day as community members and neighbors came out of the woodwork to help one another. There are a significant number of tools that we are hoping to revitalize, and one of the things is all of the energy and excitement that exists around Allianz Field that we have there that helps us create a catalyst for that type of development. Our work is to ensure that people from our community have access to being able to open a business in that space, to be able to bid for a contract with their business in that space, and to be able to get the jobs that we create both in construction and in the economic development that we create, and also to ensure that the affordable housing that we create is accessible for people in that neighborhood to live in and access as well.
Thank you. Question goes to Dora Jones Robinson.
Well, one of the things that I do know for sure is that Midway in that area was already having discussions about buying that property out anyway because they wanted it out because they want parking for the Allianz, the field up there. And so nobody talked about that, but they already was having discussions 2 years prior to the riots that they were trying to buy that property for the parking for them. So when the riots happened, that was just like a hand clap, thank you, because now we can go on and buy that property and develop on there and develop the parking that we need. And then one of the things I just want to mention one more time is that since we have a misconception about how many staff you have, why don't you tell us?
You got a question
So
for
we
me?
can get it from you.
You got a question
Can
for
we
me?
have a one-word answer?
There's significant criticism there that I can respond to. I believe our most number is either I think we in this year's budget have 14 general fund staff, and I think as we restore city funding across the city, I believe that goes up to 16 in the year 2022. I believe Randy Kelly had 15 general funded staff in his administration in a much smaller city years ago.
Thank you. Now the question back to the Midway revitalization goes to Paul Langenfeld.
Right now, there's not much reason why any business would want to move into the Midway. The light rail is one big problem. There's more crime committed on the light rail through that stretch of the Midway than anywhere else in the city. Well, that's crazy, and that has to stop. And it's a controlled environment, right, on that car. So for businesses to want to come here, first is safe streets. And it's all about getting the crime under control. It's about getting the bad elements of society that are committing these crimes off the streets. Make the streets safe, recruit businesses to come and be part of this rebuilding, and then you're going to see more businesses come, more variety, more diversity, and that's going to be a great place to shop, to recreate, to dine, to be out there, because it's a vital part of our city, and I'm going to make that happen as mayor.
Thank you. Question goes to Abu Naeem.
For the Midway revitalization, I think we should be cognizant that we gave a lot of subsidies for developers already there. I believe maybe around $250 million of TIF funding for the stadium, for development for affordable housing, bunch of different things. And part of the TIF district is that the money is allocated, our tax dollars are allocated to those places. So we got to make sure that that money is being used to promote community activities, to get community members involved, because I think that's extremely important. So for future revitalization, I think we should not be giving further tax subsidies to new development in that area unless, you know, they give something else in return or support more, because this is a very valuable land, because there's a stadium there, there's gonna be new development there, so there's no need for new property owners, new developers to get tax subsidies in that area. So we gotta make sure that the city council and the mayor, like as a mayor, I will make sure that we don't give free handouts to developers.
Thank you. The question goes to Mickey Frost.
First of all, we need to let the community voice their opinions. It's too many times that city leaders take and they don't give the community a chance to sit down and have a voice and a say-so in what takes place in their communities. This is not a leader's just his own, this is not his space only. You know, the community definitely needs to be able to sit down in those rooms and be able to talk, because the community has great ideas that can be used to revitalize any parts of our city, including the Midway. So if we can stop those stipulations for a lot of people that would like to open up businesses and would like to be, you know, business owners, and give them low interest loans in which it will help them to be able to start those businesses, well, then we can turn the Midway into a flourishing center right there like it once used to be. But we need to stop thinking that we are the ones, because we are the leaders, that we can control it, and let the community have a bigger say-so in what takes place in our own community.
Thank you. The question goes to Dean O'Gearan.
Yeah, you know, my experience as a former city council member, I did serve 6 years in the city council, and we've faced challenges like this before. And what I would do is I would bring the HRA, which is the Housing Redevelopment Authority, together with the Port Authority. And years ago, we had the Third Mariah explosion, and we ended up doing the 3rd Street Revitalization Project, which built all those new homes along 3rd Street. We also redeveloped Williams Hill as well as the Phelan Corridor. And we did that by issuing general revenue bonds. So the taxpayers weren't on the hook, and we didn't have to use general property tax dollars. So again, join the Port Authority with the HRA, issue some revenue bonds, and we can give loans to those business people to get them back in shape and back up and running.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next question, and it's on the housing market. With a number, and it goes first to Dean O'Gearan. With a number of major development projects planned or underway, including the former Ford plant, Hillcrest Golf Course, and Boys Totem Town, St. Paul is on the brink of opportunities to shape the future of the city's economy and housing market. How do you plan to use city resources to manage these projects and address concerns about gentrification?
Well, it would be nice to let the private sector do what they do best and finance those developments. Boys Totem Town, that property is owned by Ramsey County. St. Paul would play a small role because we're in charge of the zoning, but we don't own the property. The Ford plant's already up and running as far as the development goes. I would take a look at the scale and the density of both projects. The Goodrich Golf Course is in the very beginning. I think we need a lot more feedback from the community on what they want to see up there. I don't think we have enough right now. I know the Port Authority did take the lead for the Hillcrest site, but we don't have enough feedback, so I would rely on our district councils and our neighborhood groups to make recommendations on how they'd like us to proceed on those developments.
Thank you. The question goes to Paul Langenfeld.
To be clear, the demand for housing is growing exponentially in the city of St. Paul. We've got a lot of immigrants coming here. There's a need for housing. So there's a need to develop property. There's a need to redevelop property. And when you do that, that brings new investments. So economic opportunity follows those new investments. So as mayor, what I would make sure is that this provides jobs for local construction companies, local plumbers, local electricians, local painters. I want it to build the community, create more jobs, create more revenue and more personal income. That's what's going to help the whole community thrive. That puts jobs and funding back into the local economy, and when you do that, everybody gains.
Thank you. The question now goes to Abu Naeem.
All right, so I think it's really important to understand that we have a housing crisis and we need more homes that are available. One way to do this is changing the ordinances to allow single-family households to be multi-unit households. So that's a great way of getting new units or affordable housing units that sort of make sense for people's paycheck. For big new developments, we have policies in place to put affordable housing units, but once again, how much are we subsidizing as taxpayers? So for example, with gentrification, I think it's best to understand it as development. So when gentrification occurs, what actually happens is that people who are renting in a rental property, it becomes resold as a single-family household, and the renters are then displaced. What we should do is that those renters that are displaced, given an opportunity to buy a home, become a single-family home owner, or get additional funds for them being displaced. So if they live in that property, then they should be able to get first dibs in owning that property.
Thank you. The question goes to Dora Jones-Robinson.
First of all, we must be aware of gentrification. We must upgrade our cities on a constant basis, because if we don't, our buildings will start falling down. We have no new development. So we can't be afraid of gentrification, but we do need to make sure that where you're building at, that it's going to reflect the people that live in that neighborhood. You can't tell me you're going to build a high-rise in the heart of our city and charge $1,600 for a one-bedroom. That's not helping our city. That's not helping us or the people that live there. And so another thing that I want to say is that we have so much conflict of interest inside our government, and our government needs to be healthy in order to create healthy cities. Our government is not healthy right now. And so as the mayor of the city of St. Paul, I will create a healthy government, which will give us a domino effect and give us a healthy city. Right now, our government's not healthy. There's much conflict of interest going on up in there, nepotism and everything. That's got to be cleaned up first in order for us to make a healthy and clean city.
Thank you. The question goes to Melvin Carter.
St. Paul right now is an exciting city of opportunity with lots of momentum. We are entering into one of the most prolific periods of economic expansion in our city's history, and we have probably more opportunity for ground-up urban redevelopment than any city in the nation, from Hillcrest Golf Course on the east side to the Highland Bridge neighborhood in our Highland area. We have opportunities to build hundreds of new units of housing. We have opportunities to build jobs and economic opportunity. And we also know that we live in a city that has been plagued by disparities for far too long. Our work is to ensure that we're not just creating macroeconomic opportunity, but we're doing the deep, intensive work that's necessary to ensure that members of our community from every community, every family, in every corner of our community can access and participate in the economic opportunity that our city has to offer. That starts with affordable housing, which is why we are unapologetic about investing deeply in affordable housing and deeply affordable housing, and saying we need to build housing at every income level across our city. We'll continue to do that. That's what we've done from the beginning, and it is urgent for our city right now.
Thank you. Question goes to Bill Hosko.
Can you repeat the question?
With a number of major development projects planned or underway, including the former Ford plant, Hillcrest Golf Club, and Boys Totem Town, St. Paul is on the brink of opportunities to shape the future of the city's economy and housing market. How do you plan to use city resources to manage these projects and address concerns about gentrification?
They're each beautiful opportunities for the city. I do want to mention Mr. Guerin's response was spot on. The city should be as involved as little as possible, and the private sector should steer a lot of this. But the one thing I've heard from a lot of people, as I mentioned previously, is so many people in the city, they feel like a lot of the community input processes, and this is not necessarily in recent years, but a long time going on, they're full. They'll take your picture, get your signature, thank you for coming, and they'll do what they want to do in the end. I would like to see the city's website changed so that citizens who verify that they do in fact live with the city can communicate with each other on topics such as you've just described, and then have the right to vote up or down or post comments, so the citizens are steering truly what will happen with these properties versus elected officials behind the scenes. Thank you.
Thank you. Question goes to Mickey Frost.
The community definitely is struggling with housing. Everything from single fathers that need to have somewhere to take their kids. We don't look at those issues. We don't look at the fact that if it is the homelessness, you know, we look at them like they should stay homeless. And we don't give them an opportunity to say, okay, if we do create some housing for those people, well, let's create a system or let's create programming where those people that don't know much about housing can start to learn how to keep their house if we put them inside of one. There are plenty of sites where we can say, you know, people that have struggled and people that don't understand rent, people that don't understand financial literacy, start creating more places where they can come and learn those issues, learn those tools that they're going to need in order to be able to keep these houses. Because if we don't teach financial literacy, if we don't teach these individuals how to get a place and then how to keep it without having a bunch of stipulations on top of what it takes to get these homes or get these places to stay, then we're just going to continue to just, you know, twiddle our thumbs and go through the same things over and over.
Thank you. We're going to move on to what will be the last question, and it goes to Mickey Frost first. How will you invest in or encourage small businesses to flourish in St. Paul?
You have to start by giving them low interest loans. You have to give them a chance. You have to be able to say, if you come to our area and you put up a business, we will be here to support you. We'll be able to help you with experts that understand what it takes to start a business, and there will be classes that you should be able to take for that to help you with your business that you're trying to start. And then also the people that should be, whether it's a hotline or some number that you can call where people can assist you on what's going on with your business. If you're struggling with your business, what kind of help do you need to keep your business thriving or to make it thrive? And we should have resources and connections for these small businesses to be able to tap into so that they can be able to start a business, and not only that, keep that business thriving and going.
Thank you. Question now goes to Abu Naeem.
Say the question again.
How will you invest in or encourage small businesses to flourish in St. Paul?
I would say hire locally. So I want to put a policy there where we subsidize. If you hire locally, you'll get like 50 cents off per salary wage. So this way, when businesses come into St. Paul, they're hiring locally and builds connections. So when workers work in our city, they also spend that money. So that creates a cycling effect in that regards. And finally, for businesses, public safety matters. So this is where if we make things safer. So in Minneapolis, for example, a lot of businesses are leaving as a result of the violence that are happening in the community. So we have to understand that to support businesses, we also have to make sure our streets are safe. So yeah, so proper funding in the police department will also make that a hospital environment.
Thank you. Question goes to Bill Hosko.
Crime, until we get this under control, the growing crime in this city, it'll be hard to get businesses to really come back here in significant numbers. I mentioned earlier, Mayor Carter's been an elected official for 9, going on 10 years now, and the crime situation has continued to worsen. On record, he did not answer my question twice. Why did he not call for a curfew to preempt the riots that happened on May 28th and 29th of 2020? Paul mentioned earlier light rail. It's on my flyer here, back in 2008 and 2010 when light rail was being planned, I warned at length to Governor Pawlenty, Chris Coleman, the Metropolitan Council, the county commissioners, even Doug Baker at Ecolab, the consequences of having an honor system, light rail transit system in St. Paul. It's been a disaster. These things cumulatively are going to keep small businesses from coming back here. And one thing I want to say real quick, I got 10 seconds, is University Avenue, I want to see flags of every nation on earth, 75-foot tall flags from KSTP to the Capitol building, and call it the Avenue of Flags.
Thank
There's
you.
nothing like it in the world, and it would attract
Thank you.
thousands of people annually to
Your time
University
is up.
Avenue.
Thank you very much. Mr. Carter, you want to rebut?
Yes, as I said earlier, we did call a curfew. We did it in the moment that our law enforcement officers and leaders suggested that we should, and we did, which is why it's a difficult question to respond to, because it is based on a false premise.
Thank you. The question now goes to Dora Jones Robinson.
Well, one of the things that we have to know is that our small businesses are the cornerstone of our community. We've got to keep them up and running and keep them surviving. And one of the things that I would like to do is create an incentive for businesses to move back to downtown St. Paul. It's like a ghost town down there. So we've got to change what that looks like in the city of St. Paul. So I want to be able to work with them closely. One thing about me as the mayor, I'm not going to be a mayor sitting in my office all day long. I'm going to be out working hand in hand, arm to arm with businesses, these young people, people who are out here struggling. I want to be a visible mayor on the streets. They can see me. That's what real leadership looked like. It doesn't look like when you're missing in action and you're not available and you're not out here. We don't see you. We don't know what you're doing, where you're going. Can we see real leadership? I think that's what's going to change our city when we really recognize that we got real leadership in our city now. And when you vote Dora Jones Robinson on November 2nd, that's what you're going to see. Some real leadership that is out here working hand in hand with businesses, young people, adults
you.
as well.
Thank you. Question now goes to Paul Langenfeld.
In regards to small businesses in the city of St. Paul, the city needs to take a lesson from the Hippocratic Oath to do no harm. And that means to not overburden small businesses with regulations, not to increase the taxes, not to give the expensive licensing. We have to support our small businesses. Many of them are new and starting up. I want everyone, entrepreneurials trying to start a business, to be successful. And here's how I'm going to do it as St. Paul mayor. We have a diamond, 5 diamonds in this city, and they are the universities of St. Paul. St. Thomas, St. Catherine's, Concordia, Hamlin, all of those, you name it, we have diamonds. They have instructors that are experts in teaching how to run a business. And I will get them to volunteer to run community workshops and lessons and help our small business owners to flourish.
Thank you. Question now goes to Dean O'Gearan.
Yeah, you want to create an environment where business can prosper. You want to keep, get rid of litter, get rid of graffiti, keep the crime down, keep taxes low, keep less regulations, and business will flourish. They'll do well on their own. So you really want to provide a clean city for them, a nice environment, and they'll take care of themselves. Right now, I mean, we have areas of the city where, we have a lot of litter, a lot of graffiti. Those little things make a difference, and we need to be more proactive getting rid of the little things, like graffiti and litter.
Thank you. The question goes to Melvin Carter.
We'll continue to do what we've done over the past year and a half or so as our community has been hit by the pandemic. We sent millions of dollars out the door in direct relief to small businesses and low-income families. We discounted license fees significantly to help businesses keep their doors open. We facilitated businesses, bars, and restaurants opening sidewalk cafes and street cafes and waived requirements to be able to so they could facilitate that for themselves quickly without significant due process. We created a $1 million challenge for businesses owned by people of color in our community, an annual $1 million challenges that brings businesses owned by people of color from across the nation and across the world to St. Paul to compete right here. We're doing all of those things, and in the end, the best way for us to facilitate strong business growth is by doing all of the work that we're doing to have a strong and prosperous city free of disparities, raising the minimum wage, building the affordable housing that we need, investing in financial empowerment, sending our children to college, all of those things that result in exactly what's been stated. This strong demand for housing and for economic development in St. Paul are all of the things that create a strong business climate in our community.
Thank you. We'll now go to closing statements, and we'll begin with Dora Jones Robinson.
Thank you. One of the things that I would like to say is that we need to begin to hire our own people that are in the city of St. Paul. We can't keep going outside of the city of St. Paul hiring others. As the first black woman to run this race, we've never had a woman candidate, a woman governor or mayor. I think it is absolutely time that we make that change and that shift. I'm not running Republican or Democrat. I'm running independent. Our city right now, the state of Minnesota, has been on the map for nothing but negative information all across the nation. It is now time that we put our city on the map for something positive, some big changes that happened in St. Paul when we change our leadership. And that is critically important, that the leadership has to change in order for us to see some real change. We can't go back and do the same things we've always done and think we're going to get a different result. We're going to get the same result. Until we make some drastic changes, like changing the leadership from what it always have looked like as far as Democrats to somebody who's running independent, that's going to be a drastic change. Changing our leadership from a man to a woman, that's going to be a drastic change. I believe that's the change we're looking for. That's the change that St. Paul needs in our city. And on November 2nd, vote Dora Jones Robinson. For the first time, we can put a woman in that seat that has passion, that cares about our people. And one thing I want to have to say, women are actually the nurturers of earth by nature. This is the time. We cannot move past this moment. We've got to seize this moment for change, and this is the time that we got to stand up. We've always stood up and stood by our men. Now it's time for our men to stand up for us and stand by us. One of the things that we've got to change as women in politics is we've got to change the narrative. People have always undervalued women, underestimated our leadership, don't give us the credit that we deserve. Now is the time to say no more to that. We've got to change what that looks like, and we can start in the city of St. Paul and have a rippling effect throughout our country, but saying the Democrats, no more Democrats, no more Democrats.
Thank you very much. Now with his closing statement is Dino Guerin.
Yeah, times are tough. You need a public safety leader. I've got 35 years in public safety. I'm the one that can get St. Paul back safe again. Back to the basics. You keep the plows moving, keep the firefighters well-trained, keep the police on the street, give them some backing, support them, keep the playgrounds open, keep the libraries open, and get this city back on track. I'm the person that can do it. On November 2nd, vote Dino Guerin. It would be an honor to represent you. Thank you.
Thank you. Now with his closing statement is Melvin Carter.
There's a lot of negativity in this room. And it's understandable because we've been through significant challenge. They say challenge is what proves your character. And I'm proud of the character that our city has proven ourselves to have over the course of the last 2 years in particular. From the city employees who stood forward to see us through the pandemic crisis, to the business leaders who saw their restaurants shut down and said, how do we get this food to families in need, to just the neighbors who came out of the woodwork after the worst night of devastation in our city to say, how do we help another stranger in need? I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the spirit and the character that our city has shown. I'm proud of the way that our city has stood up and put ourselves on the map as leaders, not only for our community, but for the nation, on a whole host of issues, on public safety reform, on climate crisis, on economic justice, on guaranteed income, on reparations, on so many things that the rest of the country, the rest of the world is looking to St. Paul because we're creating solutions moving forward. We know that we have a lot of work left to do, and I believe in you. The reason I'm here is because I believe in our community. What guaranteed income is about, what minimum wage is about, what library late fines is about our insistence on betting on you every single chance that we get, betting on our families, betting on our workers, betting on our children, betting on our businesses. Every single chance we get, we're going to keep on betting on our community, not just with the policies, but even with the process. That's why everything we do it through deep commitment to public engagement, to community engagement. I'm Melvin Carter. I am your mayor. I am the DFL and Labor endorsed candidate in this race, and I'm asking you to rank me first on your ballot on November 2nd. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now with his closing statement is Abu Naeem.
So I'm a community organizer. I bring businesses and residents together to do amazing things. I organize neighborhood cleanups because it's an opportunity for residents to beautify their neighborhood and take action and build community pride. And one of the things I do for cleanups, I make sure I door knock for every house, and also I make sure I treat the volunteers with respect and dignity because they are the heroes in participating in these events. And for the last cleanup, I got over 60 residents to get involved, and it was absolutely beautiful seeing residents come together and create to really step up and really perform. And one of the things I've been doing is when I'm campaigning is that I've been going through talking to residents throughout the neighborhood for the last 28 days. And there's a lot of unsung heroes in our community. And 2 years ago, when I did some door knocking, I asked residents, do you feel like you belong in the community? And residents recognize that a sense of belonging is not something that can be handed to you. It is something you contribute to. I believe that every citizen has an asset they can offer to others. This can be volunteer time, mentorship, entertainment, or even block parties. And for my administration, I want to cultivate these assets and use them to build our city from the ground up. And if elected, I want to use the American Rescue Plan dollars to do a citywide door knocking effort to talk to every resident and find out what their asset they can offer and really amplify that so we can really build a city from the ground up. And please vote for me please vote for Abu Naeem on November 2nd. And please have conversation with your friends and family, and that's the only way we can win to go forward.
Thank you. Next with his closing statement is Mickey Frost.
I believe it's time to stop doing this. Stop pointing our fingers at everybody else and turn them fingers around and start pointing them fingers back at ourselves. Start being held accountable for the things that you do, because all of us, you sitting right there at home, you have either directly or indirectly paid some type of tribute to what's going on in these communities out here, whether it's through systematic racism or through some of the efforts of not being there when you could have said something and you just didn't say nothing, and now that crime escalated a little bit more than where it would have if you'd said something. I think we need to hold everybody accountable. I need to be held accountable. Melvin still needs to be held accountable. Those city officials, the judges, the prosecutors that are letting some of these individuals come through those jail cells and just get out of jail with a slap on the hand. Everybody needs to play their part. No one has a special button that you can push that's going to just change the crime that's out here. No one can do that. But together, what we can do is take a little bit of what I know with a little bit of what you know, and we can put that together to start to make change here in the communities. We can't yell and scream our way to change, because that's not what change is going to come from. What's going to come from, what is going to make change is, what I've done is I've founded the 8-18 Truth Center. What the Truth Center stands for is trying to bring people together. Try to take and say, okay, you may have this belief, you may have this belief, you might be a Republican, a Democrat, who cares? It's time to get away from those games that these political parties are playing with us all and start to realize that we need to be one. How can America tell us that in order to be an American, we need to unite, but in order to do that, you need to pick a side? That's a contradiction right in itself right there. So what we need to do is get away from those games that are being played and start to unify and start to say, you know what, I can listen to you. You listen to me. Let's listen to each other and figure out ways together, because not one person has the answer. And I am endorsed by God. Let's bring God back into this. Faith must be a part of change. Thank you.
Now with his closing statement, Bill Hosko.
I'm proud to say I'm not endorsed by any special interests or the establishment. I've been 30-year small business owner, 28 of them in downtown St. Paul, of which have watched and experienced the collapse of the retail environment down there, and perhaps 80% of the workforce has since left. But I renewed my lease a year ago. I'm sticking around for 10 more years. I'm not planning on going anywhere. Crime, unless we get that under control, and it's being glossed over. A lot of us in this room and a lot of people at home, you know that it's being glossed over. Unless we get that under control, the city's in trouble. Among father of 4 today, when I was door knocking or dropping close by, he's afraid to take his children to go to a park a block away. This is the reality in St. Paul. Light rail and buses, it's a disaster what's happened, and it's not being talked about. You can go to billhosko.org and learn more about what I have to say on that issue. The riots were not a single night event. They were a 2-night event, and that's why a curfew was put in place on Saturday night. Negativity, good grief. If I'm mayor, I will welcome your criticism, ladies and gentlemen. You have my, I pledge everything. You'll have my word. You can criticize me and show negativity all you want. Ranked choice voting, a lot of us do not like it. If I'm elected, we're going to have a referendum on this in 2 years' time to repeal it, and I frankly think most of the people in the city have had enough of it, and they will repeal it. I hope you will rank me first, ladies and gentlemen. I believe I'm the most qualified. I have the most experience. I have the most history, involvement in this city. But if you choose to vote for somebody else, somebody other candidate, one of these at this table, that's great. Rank me second then, please. And what I would like to do finally then is, ladies and gentlemen in this room, and particularly those of you at home, I ask for your vote. St. Paul, we're in a difficult situation. So much is being glossed over. We need to change things at City Hall. It's really time for a change at City Hall, and it's time we put St. Paul back onto a higher track again. I'm very happy to have been here this evening,
Thank you.
and thank you for your time.
Now with his closing statement, Paul Langenfeld.
My name is Paul Langenfeld, and I want to be your mayor. I'm going to work for this city. I'm proud of this city. I am the proud son of a World War II veteran. Veterans are close to my heart. My foundation serves disabled veterans, those who have served and sacrificed. Where would any of us be without our veterans? So as the next mayor of St. Paul, I will honor our veterans by bringing back fireworks on the 4th of July, because by God, they deserve it. And we cannot thank our veterans enough. They paid the price for our freedom. And I, Paul Langenfeld, as mayor, will never, ever forget that. I'm going to make a commitment to every voter in this city. I'm going to commit that I will work 60 hours a week as your mayor. I've got the strength, I've got the energy, and I've got the passion to make this city great. I'm also a man of prayer, so I make you this vow. Every day, I have been praying for the people of St. Paul. I will continue as mayor. Every day, I am praying for the people of this city. And I will fast every Friday. I've got skin in the game, and I am willing to make sacrifices to make this work. It is a priority of mine to put the freedom of our residents over the freedom of our criminals. I want to get criminals off the streets and keep them off with stiffer sentences. I want to lock them up and throw away the key, or at least lose it for a very long time. I would love if you vote Paul Langenfeld in your first preference. If not, second choice, third choice, fourth choice.
Thank you.
Let's take this city back.
Thank you. The League thanks the candidates for their participation, the St. Paul Neighborhood Network for filming this event and for the use of their facilities, our League volunteers, and you, the audience, for your attendance and interest. Let your voice be heard by voting by November 2nd. Thank you and good night. Thank you.
And you controlled the nonsense. Thank you. That's very, thank you.
I tried to control the nonsense. Thank you.